welcome to Liverpool City Region Creating Careers. On today's episode, we've got a first actually, because we've got several members of a team. They make up the Criminal Justice Liaison and Diversion team at Mersey NHS Foundation Trust. It was a bit of a tongue twister for me there. So because it may be easier because there's several of you, if you just wouldn't mind quickly introducing yourself and your role. So start with you, Sadie, please.
Yeah, hiya, I'm Sadie Canning-Dosser. I'm the Operational Manager for Criminal Justice Liaison and Diversion, and I'm a mental health nurse by background.
Thank you. Sarah?
Hi, my name's Sarah. I'm a mental health practitioner, and I'm also a mental health nurse by background.
Brilliant. Colette?
Hiya, I'm Colette. I'm a mental health nurse and I work as a mental health practitioner.
Brilliant. Annie?
Annie, and I'm a learning disability nurse by background, and I'm the team manager for the team.
Brilliant. And Paul?
I am Paul Regan. I'm a liaison diversion peer mentor, like basically a support worker.
That's absolutely wonderful. Thank you all so much for taking time out of your schedule to join us today. I'm really looking forward to seeing what comes out of today's episode. So students, as always with every episode of Creating Careers, if you haven't completed the pre-work, please click pause, go to the description below. There you will find a link to our website. You can download everything you need there, complete that pre-work, and then come back to us nice and ready to take on all the wonderful stuff that the team are going to share today. So Sadie, just to start with you, would you mind giving an overview of what the team does at Mersey Care?
Yeah, okay, no problem. So we are a team of health and social care professionals, and we work with people who are progressing through the criminal justice system. And we work with people from the age of 10 upwards, so we're an all-age service. And what we try and do is engage people as early on in their kind of criminal justice journey, and sometimes it's an offending journey where they're in the offending system, they've allegedly committed an offence, but sometimes it's prior to that, so it's where their behaviour may well indicate that they're at risk of offending. And so what our team does is we try and engage with people really early on, and we try and identify what are the drivers for offending, and what other vulnerabilities has the person got. Are they mental health vulnerabilities? Are they social care vulnerabilities? Are they adverse childhood events? Or are there other things like substance misuse, housing, any need that person has? What we try and do is identify that need with that person and look at a plan to try and support that person, because what we know is if we can support them with some of those vulnerabilities and those needs, we might well be able to divert them off that offending pathway. We're a really big team, and we've got mental health nurses in the team, learning disability nurses, occupational therapists, social workers, support practitioners, and these support practitioners have got different qualifications and experience. But what we've also got is people with lived experience of criminal justice, of health services, of addiction services, substance misuse services. So we've got a really varied, a broad spectrum of people who work in our service with loads of skills and loads of experience that can engage people really well. We're based in court, we're based in police custody, and we work in the community as well, but we also work with people who are being released from prison, and we also work with people who maybe are in crisis and call emergency services. So where there's a kind of mental health needs, we will respond to that as well. So that's kind of us in a nutshell, I think.
No, that's brilliant. Thank you so much. Just to I suppose make it a little bit more real to students, Annie or Colette, do you mind just giving? Obviously, I understand that individual cases are confidential, but if you wouldn't mind just giving an example of the kind of cases that you work on.
Okay, well, Sadie mentioned that we see people in crisis in the community. And part of my role is working on police triage cars. So it's a mental health police car, basically a police car with mental health practitioner on. And if police get calls through to their call centre and it appears that there's a mental health or vulnerability element to that call rather than a crime particularly being committed, we as mental health practitioners would go and see that person, see what help we could put in place. So a good example, I think, an interesting lady who I met, she was a lady in her 50s, and she'd been in and around a train station in Liverpool for about 5 hours, and members of the public had become aware of her and were wondering if she was in distress or what was going on. They called the police triage car, so we went to see her, and it transpired that this lady had actually left her home country of France, travelled to London by train, spent a month in London, ran out of money and travelled up north. And that was all driven by the belief that Spanish secret police were chasing her. She was really quite mentally unwell, and she was very vulnerable. She couldn't speak English. She'd run out of money. Her family didn't know where she was. And it was just so fortunate that the members of public identified that lady and called us, because we used a translator on one of our mobile phones and managed to do a mental health assessment in French with the lady. Yeah, and it transpired she was very, very poorly. She didn't have any insight that her mental health was poorly. She really believed she needed to get to Glasgow with no finances to get there, no real plan, just vaguely thought she needed to be in Glasgow to escape. So we ended up with that lady, taking her to hospital, and she ended up getting admitted to a mental health ward. The staff on the ward have been able to contact her family in France, and they're trying to get a plan together to get her back home safely. But that was really quite an interesting person that we saw.
Yeah, totally. So a lot of what we try to do with schools and students is we tell them about employability skills, how soft skills that you gain in your everyday life, like being able to communicate with people, etc., how they can transfer, you know, into what you do when you have your career in your job. So just out of interest for those students who are focusing on transferable skills, Sarah or Paul or Annie, would you mind telling us what skills you think are really important to, you know, to work in a part of this team?
I think it's really important to be able to listen, and not just listen, but to be able to hear what is actually being said, as well as pick up on things in the environment, because somebody might tell you that they're okay, but the way that they're coming across, you can tell that there's just something that's not quite right and that they might need some extra support. So it's having that patience and just thinking about how you would feel in that situation as well. So really having some empathy with people. You might not have been through it yourself, but pull the things that you have been through and use that to really think about how somebody else might be feeling. And expect the unexpected. You need to be able to think on your feet and stay calm when you're in quite stressful situations.
That's brilliant. Annie, have you got anything to add to that, or Paul?
Oh, hi. I think just building on what Sarah said about them situations where they can become quite stressful, and I think that's a really fair comment to make. And I think your problem solving skills and your ability to prioritise. So by prioritise, I mean you may have five. I'll just use 5 situations or 5 cases in front of you, and being able to look at each of them cases and go, okay, what's the most important thing for me to do right now? What do I need to look at and think about and target? And I think particularly in our team, because we're known as the frontline assessment services. So basically anyone who's accessing mental health services will come to the service that we sit before they go into what we call secondary mental health services, where you're getting specialist treatment. So we have to be able to go, okay, this is what we've got in front of us. What do we do first? What do we do second? And what do we do third? And to do that, you need to have good prioritization skills and be able to problem solve when the inevitable spanner in the works come in and we have to deal with whatever comes our way, which is often the case.
That's great. Paul, is there anything you want to add to that?
Yeah, it's just what I've realised is that, like, I have to be able to listen, you know, and try not to be judgmental, and you know, try and put yourself in their shoes. And because I've been in that position myself, because I've got lived experience, I actually know what it's like to be in that position, you know, and and to let them know that I've got lived experience on a need-to-know basis, so they do open up, so they don't feel like they're being judged. You know what I mean? Because I always felt like I was being judged, especially like if it was around, you know, it wasn't just being judged on mental health, but also being judged for being a drug addict. You know what I mean? And I didn't feel like it wasn't like nothing that they were doing. They were doing a good job. It was just how I felt, because my self-esteem was really low. And so I just let them know a bit about my past, and then they seemed to they seemed really shocked, because it's been like 10 years since I was in that situation. You look at me now, and some of them think I'm a policeman or something like that, but I'm being asked, are you useless to you policeman, because I look totally different when I got my suit on, like. But it's and it's, you get really shocked, and then they open up then and see, how did you end up where you are, and then I just share with them how I got clean, how I turned my life around, and I do outreach work with them then, and I run an addiction group in the life rooms, and they come to the group. So yeah.
So so I suppose relationship management is a massive skill for you, making people feel comfortable with you and building relationships. That's really interesting. Thank you so much for sharing. Sadie, I can imagine some students are looking at this now thinking, this is something that really interests me. It's a really meaningful, worthwhile job that I'd love to get involved with, but maybe a little bit nervous about, you are going to see some emotionally distressing sites and people in lots of distress, and that can have an impact on you as a worker. So what support does Mersey Care and the NHS, what support do they give to their staff to make sure they can cope with that, and that things are fine on that side?
So Mersey Care have a really robust system of support in place. So in terms of our team, we do things like we have regular reflective practice reviews, regular supervision, development sessions. So looking at that person and saying, where do you want to be in 5 years' time? What do you want to focus on? So encouraging that development. Reflective practice, we have internal peer-led reflective practice, but we also have a regular reflective practice with a psychologist leading the session to talk about either scenarios, incidents that have occurred, or just certain things that are going on, COVID being an example of that. But external to our team, we have a really, really comprehensive staff support service within Mersey Care, where you can access anything from a crisis phone call with a psychologist to personal development counselling to CBT to, all kinds of really effective and varied talking therapies. And we encourage our colleagues to access staff support as and when they need it, to utilise it in response to certain situations, or to just engage in it on an ongoing basis to support resilience. The Trust also has a coaching strategy as well, so people can access coaching at any level in terms of where they work and what they do. And again, that's about development both personally and professionally. So I think there's a lot of support around. We try and encourage that within the team, and we talk about things and challenges when we have team meetings as well, which we have regularly twice a month. So I'm sure I've forgotten loads there.
No, that's absolutely great. So I think there's a lot of reassurance there that if you go into this kind of role, there's so much support for you, and I suppose as well, the support from your team and your colleagues is also really, really important, isn't it? And just speaking to each other and sometimes it's nice just to speak out loud, isn't it? Even if someone doesn't even respond, just to speak to someone. So Paul, if we could, you touched on earlier on your role with the team. Could you give us a little bit more detail on that, please? Like, what is a peer mentor, and how and why did you get involved with the role?
Well, what I was how it started, I was running an addiction group in the life rooms, and the reason I first went there is because I was suffering with I was stressed, anxiety. I was like, I was depressed. I just took on a 4-week-old baby on my own, and I had to leave my job to get him the baby and stuff like that. I was a few years in recovery, and so I went to the life rooms, when he was in nursery. Started doing a few courses, a few groups in there. Got asked to start an addiction group, which I had to start myself. It was like an informal, relaxed discussion group around addiction, and I was running that for a year or two, and then I was approached by a member of staff because they were looking for they were looking for someone to work with, volunteer with the criminal justice team as a peer mentor.
And it's you using your lived experience.
Yeah.
To engage. It's a lot of the hard to reach people, isn't it, Paul?
Yeah,
so whereas I'd tip up in me, suit or whatever and go, hi, I'm where you might, and they might go away. You might be able to go, hiya, this is who I am, and actually I've been where you're sitting. So it's that, isn't it?
Yeah,
and that's happened, hasn't it, Paul? When I've tried to speak with someone, and your approach has been it's worked so much more effectively. And I think one of the main things in your job role, you instill hope in people. And it's a realization that I'm not the only one that feels like this. Other people have been through this, and look what I could achieve.
So yeah, what my background is that, I left school in an early age with no qualifications. I got mixed up in the wrong crowd. I ended up being on drugs for a very long time. And that was, well, it wasn't a life, but that was my existence. And I ended up with mental health problems through taking drugs. I was on heroin, crack cocaine, methadone. And there was different drugs back then. Heroin's sort of going out of fashion now, so it's like different drugs for younger people now. But it all takes you to the same place. And after, 28 years of doing that, I started when I was 15, and then the next thing I knew, I was like 43, and I started going to recovery meetings, got introduced to recovery meetings, and got clean, and that was just over 10 years ago. And in that space of time, I've become a single parent. My little lad's, I've had him since he was 4 weeks old. He's 6 now. It's just me and him. We're like best mates, and he's never had to see me drink. He's never had to see me use drugs. I'm able to give him attention. And from doing that, from being clean and doing that stuff, I've been given opportunities to volunteer with criminal justice team as a peer mentor. And to support people and give people my experience. Being part of a team. When I first went in there, I felt really inferior. I felt like, these people have all studied, they've been to college, they've worked really hard for where they are, and I've just walked in basically, but like I've got skills in different ways, and my confidence has grown with the help of the team. They've been really supportive, and they've been really unjudgmental, and they've been really friendly, and I wasn't too good on computers. I'm still not 100%. I'm still getting there. But even like asking people for help and asking people for support and all that, they've never ever like tutted or gone, God, you asking again? You know what I mean? They've always been like really friendly and supportive. I've never experienced that. Even in me 10 years clean time, I've never experienced such a, and all of them, every one of them, was really good. And it's good to be part of a team and to give my experience where, it's like every client's different. Might be clients where my experience doesn't mean anything, and, I'm not taking nothing away from anyone who hasn't walked the streets, the path I've walked, because, they're really good in what they do, and, they've got their own experience, like it's been said, but it doesn't feel real sometimes. you know, from being in court on a charge to being in court with, you know, on the other side.
You've used the peer mentor role not only to, you know, improve your own situation, but then the added bonus is that you're helping other people's lives as well, and steering them in the right direction.
And, you know, and
brilliant.
I've you know, some of them have come to my addiction group, and I've even referred some of them from the addiction group to like fellowships like Narcotics Anonymous, Alcoholics Anonymous, Cocaine Anonymous, you know, and some of them, you know, have really turned their lives around.